Welcome to Saturday's Warrior, the channel where we talk BYU, Big 12. We're also your BYU channel for the College Huddle, the largest fan-led college sports podcast community. I'm Trevor, and with us as usual is Adam, but also joining us tonight is special guest and man who really needs no introduction, the host of the Locked On Cougars podcast, Jake Hatch. Welcome, Jake.
Thanks for having me, guys. How are you?
Awesome. Good to have you on.
Yeah, we're doing really well. I'm really excited to have you on. And if you are one of the few BYU fans who has stumbled upon this show that does not know about Locked On Cougars, you need to go check it out. You won't regret it. I'll have a link to it in the description, or you can even just search for it. It'll be easy to find. But before you do that, stay and watch this video. Give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We appreciate it. It really helps us grow the channel, helps us reach more Cougar fans and keep the conversation going. So Jake, thank you so much for joining us. I know you are super busy, especially during football season. So we really appreciate you carving out a little bit of time for us. I do have to say before we get started, as I started my channel and tried to figure out how to do this whole thing, very perfectionist, trying to get everything just right. But upon listening to you, and I hope this doesn't come across as a backhanded compliment, but listening to your style, which is just very genuine and off the cuff and really like yourself, that was something I tried to lean into and emulate. So, learning from you as I got going through this. Now, you obviously working around media are much more polished and much better at this than I am. But I wanted you to know, that was something that I picked up when listening to you. And so I think you do a great job, and I love the show.
Well, I appreciate that. I think you nailed it, though. I try to kind of just roll with my thoughts on everything. That's kind of the nature of a daily podcast. You're never quite sure where the conversation is going to go because you're at the mercy of the news cycle. But I'm happy to be a resource for anybody. I've done this for I don't know how many other BYU podcasts and lent my insight on things. And it's just something I enjoy doing because I think this is a community that is continuing to grow and it deserves to grow. And if I can help grow it just a little bit, I'm happy to do it.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate it. Now that we've done some of the housekeeping, we're going to go through and talk about the UCF game. We want to look ahead to the Holy War, talk about the BYU season as a whole. Before we get too far into that, Jake, we got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
That you are one of the lucky individuals who gets to work around sports. You get to talk about sports, and one of those, BYU being a major component of that. And so can you tell us a little bit about what that's like and how you got into that?
Well, so yeah, as you mentioned, I'm lucky enough to be working officially in the media realm. I am a producer for the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City. My day job, as it were, I'm the producer of DJ and PK. They've been doing their show for 22 years now. I've been lucky enough to be with them for 10 seasons of football is the way I kind of look at it. 10 years in all working with them, and it beats the alternative, as I like to say. I got lucky enough about 15 years ago that Greg Wrubell was looking for an intern for when he was working for KSL News Radio. I applied for it. I was not a broadcast major or anything of the like when I was a student at BYU at the time, studying history of all things. Kind of a random way, but Greg, against probably his better judgment, decided to pick me as his intern for that football season. I spent an entire year, a football season and a basketball season. That's actually the basketball season Jimmer Fredette went off.
That's awesome.
As his intern. And I can tell you now that he has like 6 interns, he has told me multiple times, I probably should not have put as much on you as I did as my I'm like, we all live and learn. And I've tried to carry that forward. I've been doing sports radio, like I said, for 12 years now. And it's truly it's a dream come true. It's a fun thing every single day. I may not just be specifically on BYU with regards to my radio job, because you cover a lot of things with Utah and the Utah Jazz, and now Utah Hockey Club also in the mix here in Salt Lake City. So that keeps me busy on that side of it. But I do Locked On Cougars essentially as a side hustle. And I hate to call it a side hustle because it's become more than that. It's a passion project more than anything else. And gives me a chance to kind of spout off on BYU every day. And that's really what I enjoy doing. And the nice part is the response has been very, very positive. And I'm appreciative to every Cougar fan out there who has checked out the show, maybe plans to check out the show, and just gives us the support we give us.
Yeah, Jake, I got a couple questions about the show eventually, but I got to ask, is Greg comes across as such a fan as well as a professional. Is he a big a fan in person as he seems as he comes across over the air?
Greg is as genuine as they come when it comes to his radio call. That is just Greg in everyday life. I've been privileged enough to be around a lot of media members, and there are some that I hate to say it are two-faced. They're one way off air, and when the light comes on, as it were, they're different. That's not Greg. Greg is about as genuine as they come. He is passionate. I mean, just dearly passionate about BYU sports. And you can tell that kind of goes into how he approaches his job. He sees it as his dream come true to call BYU games, and he wants to represent Cougar Nation, and he does an extremely good job. Having worked behind the scenes with them, I can tell you that, yeah, what you see, the WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. That's exactly what it is with Greg Wrubell.
Touchdown.
And that's not manufactured stuff, guys. He is on it from the get-go, and I respect him madly for it. It's really cool that a guy that I've worked with for over a decade, and Hans Olsen is now his color analyst there on BYU Radio. Hans is just like Greg. He's as passionate as they come, and I think it comes across in the way that they operate inside the radio booth.
Yeah, they're so good. I turn down ESPN and sync up their broadcast whenever I can because it's such a better experience. They're fun to listen to.
It's probably the best idea that you can do. Funny enough, I'm sitting in the press box or I'm watching the game remotely, doing whatever I'm doing for radio. I usually have an AirPod in my ear with the BYU radio call, listening to Greg because he's got more updates on stuff that I can utilize than anybody else. So yeah, I completely understand Adam.
Yeah.
It's great. So Jake, sorry, I was caught up listening to you, and I one thing I was gonna say is it's funny listening to you speak in real time because I listen to all my podcasts almost like double speed, and so like you do sound like a normal person. So
I was thinking the same thing.
Well, here's the thing. I also listen to podcasts at double speed, and there are podcasts I've listened to for literally years that if I ever hear them talk again, like say real life, or for whatever reason that podcast gets slowed down, I'm like, what in the world is happening to this guy? Like it catches me unawares all the time. So I completely understand it. You are not the first individuals to have pointed that out to me. Said, Jake, you talk so slow in real life. I'm like, I don't really talk that slow in real life, but when you double speed my podcast, yeah, it absolutely is going to make you feel like, oh, he's talking like a normal human being for a minute.
I have to tell you, when I watch back any of my stuff, just to try to see what I'm doing, I can't do it in real time. It's really painful. But if I double speed, I'm like, okay, because all of a sudden it doesn't sound like me. It's almost like just watching somebody else. But Adam, did you have any other questions for Jake specifically?
Just two. One, I got to know. I grew up in Utah. I'm living in Virginia now, and I loved growing up in Utah. But Rivalry Week was a two-edged sword, man. It was insane. Yeah. And I remember as a teenager, I'd dish out so much smack, and I'd take it because we'd lose, every other year. How is Utah right now? Is it just a madhouse? Like, what's going on there?
Let's just put it this way. Utah fans are in a bad spot right now. And here's the thing. It's insane to consider how different these seasons have gone. Because remember, we had BYU pick 13th in the preseason poll, Utah favorites to win the Big 12. In many respects, they're living opposite lives. Utah is a middling program. They're 1-4 in conference. They're near the bottom, probably in 13th or 14th place. Whereas BYU, as the only 5-0 team currently, they're number one in the conference. So yeah, we've got a 2-week lead up to the Holy Wars. We like to call it out here, as most of you guys know. And some people get mad about that name. It's what the national media calls it. So that's what we just roll with it. We got 2 weeks to lead up to this. I don't feel like it's going to have the same piss and vinegar. I hate to sound crass on that when it comes to this rivalry this year, just because Utah is so far down right now. But there is still a big rivalry element out here in Utah. There's absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the game. It'll be awesome, and it is so different coming in as the favorite team. I never thought that was going to happen this season. I mean, that's how this whole season has been.
What's been like a decade plus since they were even considered a favorite?
Seriously, forever. Well, I also wanted to ask, your Connor Pay episodes are awesome. I mean, that's can't miss stuff, and he's so much fun to listen to. I've loved hearing about his injury journey. I'm in the medical field as an administrator, so I'm soaking up all the stuff that he's talking about. But from a fan standpoint, I love knowing what's happening to a player and this is what's keeping him out. This is his timeline for return. It is a breath of fresh air instead of like, well, he's got a lower leg injury. You know, he might come back the last week of the season. And I get that there's a strategic advantage to that. With Texas Tech moved this year to disclose all player injuries. Do you see that happening across the industry? Are they going to move that way eventually, or as fans, are we always going to be stuck with the upper body, lower body injury?
Fingers crossed it happens, because here's the thing. We all know that sports gambling is becoming more and more a thing when it comes, especially to college sports. And they've opened up that Pandora's box. There's no way you're closing it again. And the only way to ward off, as Steve Sarkisian says, is these gamblers contacting student trainers, tutors, whichever way they can get information. The only way to negate that is to put out injury reports. Now, the Big Ten has obviously done it with the game day stuff. I believe the MAC and the SEC have done something similar. You mentioned Texas Tech. They're the most forward thinking, speaking of the Red Raiders, because theirs is like NFL style. Monday morning, it comes out. It's got questionable, it's got probable, it's got doubtful and out. They just lay out what the injury is. I think that's the best way to go about it. If we're going to go professional like college sports is going right now, because hate to say it, folks, it's not an amateur sport no more. We're paying guys millions of dollars at this point. You got to go more NFL style, and you got to have detailed injury reports. That's what these leagues require at the professional level. That's where college football needs to go. Now, on the Connor Payne note real quick, I'll pull back the curtain a little bit. When he got injured, I saw him get injured in that Baylor game, and I was almost like reticent to say, hey, Connor, is everything okay? But he texted me after the game and said, hey, I got injured. Let's talk about it on, I think it was Monday or Tuesday when we recorded that episode. And I'm like, okay, how much detail are you willing to go into? He's like, I'll lay it out there. And so we record the episode. He lays out, he has a Jones fracture in his foot. He's got a screw in there. It's going to take this many weeks and all that stuff. And I was like, dude, should you have given up that much detail? He's like, I don't care. It's what happened. I'm like, okay.
That's so awesome.
But your coaches care. And he's like, he said that he told the coaches, I'm just going to tell the truth. And I appreciate the fact that he's going about that. I think Kalani Satake has gotten a little bit better about kind of revealing stuff. He actually, in media availability, recording this on a Monday night. So earlier today, question was asked about LJ Martin and why he didn't finish the game. And he said that was just a bruise. He picked up a contusion in the game and it knocked him out for the rest of the game. And that squares up what I was told by multiple people I talked to after the game inside the program, who said he could have gone back in. We didn't need him at that point. He cleared a pod. He was rolling. We're going to let him finish the game. And I can respect that because they want to keep him 100% healthy if at all possible ahead of that game.
So do you get inside looks at injuries that you don't share on the podcast and just being associated with the program?
Not to that level with like Connor. I get a feel sometimes, and somebody will pass along some intel, but not to that level. Like the fact that Connor came on and said, "Hey, I had this happen in high school. Here's what's going to happen. They're going to drill a screw into this bone. It's going to calcify over, and heaven forbid, 6 weeks from now, I'm capable of playing." And I was like, "Wow, that is a level of detail you do not get from literally anybody."
Seriously.
I am privy to some more information, but I try to be as open and transparent as I possibly can be with the podcast and pass along what I know, because I feel like I'm an extension of what the fans are looking for. You guys want as much detail as you can get, because trust me, this is an industry and a world that people don't want to share anything. And if I can lend a little insight into that while not also making my quote unquote sources angry, I'm happy to do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, yeah, we love it. And if you're not, seriously, go be an everydayer of Jake. You can just pick up little tidbits every day and stay informed and know what's going on with the program. So we love that. But you were talking about, though, LJ Martin in the UCF game. So let's transition over to that. So you did actually a pretty good breakdown on your episode. So I don't want to necessarily rehash all that, but just kind of open up, like, what are the major takeaways from BYU with their game at UCF and really throughout the season, and where are they? Like they've put together some really good games, but it seems like there's still room for improvement. So what do we still need to see from these guys if they do want to continue to make a deep run?
Well, I think you nailed it right there, Trevor, is they still have room to improve. And that's insane to consider. They're 8-0. Like, well, let's not lose sight of the fact that this is an incredible run that they're on. And in many respects, the defense has been absolutely lights out most of the season. Now, they struggled against Oklahoma State in their run fits, and there were a couple of breakdowns against UCF that allowed RJ Harvey to break off some big runs. But the defense has been essentially just a steady Eddie in terms of its overall performance all season long. But the offense, we've been waiting for this run game to come alive in the last two games, going north of 250 yards. That's the performances that Tyler Algier and Jamal Williams were having for BYU. And if that rushing offense can continue to replicate itself where they can go for 200 plus routinely the rest of the season on into whatever the postseason entails, whether it's the Big 12 championship game, a college football playoff berth, all that stuff's out there on the table. If that rushing attack can continue to pump out 200, 250 yards, and you get the passing game going where Jake plays like good Jake, as I like to call it, good Jake Retzlaff versus bad Jake Retzlaff, this is an offense that could absolutely be pumping out 500-yard games. I think Jake is more than capable of going 250 in a game. And so long as you don't turn the ball over, that's a recipe for major success for BYU. And let's not even forget the fact that the special teams continues to absolutely astound us. The fact that Sam Vanderhaar had the stones to snap the ball between his legs to Will Ferrin, I'll never get over it. And Sam is one of my favorite people to talk to in that program. He is as Aussie as they come, and he is loving life. And it's really cool to see him do his thing. And the audacity to be like, you know what I'm going to do? It's got snapped to me. I'm going to snap it to Will. That was pretty cool. And that's the crazy thing. These special teams have been a very nice addition to helping BYU win football games. So yeah, there's still improvement to be made. They can be better against the run overall on defense. They can continue to pass the ball at a higher clip, and just overall efficiency on offense can go up. And if that happens, guys, we're looking at a team that could go actually 12-0 and be in the college football playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. About that real quick, some people were on Will Ferrin for not taking the pass, and I thought that was the right decision. You have the number one goal is get that first down.
Yeah.
And it looked like the angle, for someone who doesn't practice throwing the ball all the time on the run, kind of across your body, I was like, he was open, but like, don't take that chance. Just get the first down. He did the right thing. And
and I think he said on the post game that it's designed as a run first.
Yes.
And then the safety option is that tight end running out. So if they've sniffed out his play and they're going to come and put a hit on him, he's at least got a chance to loft it over the top of the defense and maybe complete it that way. But he had the run, he had the first down. I think he said some of his teammates told him he could have cut it up for a touchdown, but he got tunnel vision at the first down marker, which I think you would as a kicker running your first fake field goal.
Well, and here's the thing about it is, it's designed for you to get the first down. And I know that it was Matava Taase, who was on that route in the open field, and he had him. Had he been a more polished thrower, potentially, he could have thrown that in there and hit him, and it probably could have gone for 6. But you look at the angle of the defender coming at Taase, and if that ball does not get there in a very, very short amount of time, it very well gets broken up, if not intercepted. So I actually, Will did exactly what he's supposed to do. Get the first down, get out of bounds, don't get yourself injured and live to play another down. Now, as Kalani said, it would have been nice to reward that effort with a touchdown. They still got the field goal a few plays later, but it was a pretty incredible play, all things considered.
Yeah, it was awesome. Very entertaining. It's crazy that across the Big 12, there were, I think, three
of them. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So a lot of fun, it's a great conference, very entertaining conference, not get enough credit. Speaking of which, so BYU is, making this push. You talked about potentially being able to go 12-0. It seems like they continue to get disrespected. Some of that respect is finally coming around. You have even Josh Pate coming back and apologizing a little bit to BYU fans. Maybe he's finally starting to believe. I think BYU is now favored in all their remaining games in this regular season. So how do you think that is going to impact the mindset of this program, who's really flourished off of being underdogs?
They'll have to manufacture being the underdog somehow, and they'll find a way. Here's the thing: there's always something that you can find to manufacture that. You mentioned the fact that Josh Pate is speaking up. I'm a devotee of the Solid Verbal podcast with Ty Hildebrandt and Dan Rubenstein, and they kind of like Pate have kind of been poo-pooing BYU just because if you look at the metrics, BYU is like punching way above their weight. If you want to go simply by numbers, that's what they're doing. But similar to what Josh Pate said, Ty and Dan on the Solid Verbal said that, okay, we're BYU fans, we apologize. We should be more of a believer in your team, but understand that there are teams that kind of just come out of nowhere and don't make any rhyme or reason as to why they're having success. And they said that's what BYU is. And I will back them up. They said that TCU a couple years ago, when TCU made that run to the national championship game, they were talking all season long about, okay, when's the bottom going to fall out for this TCU team? Because they had the magic around them all the time. You guys saw that TCU team. They pulled out victories from everywhere, it felt like. And they're kind of comparing those two teams. And I think it's a pretty valid comparison because they're just good football teams. Is there anything on those teams that make you say, oh, wow, that's why they're doing this? That's why they're doing it? No, but they know how to win football games. And I think that's the best point to be made about this BYU team is they know how to win. And that winning is a skill. It absolutely is. And we have seen BYU have teams where they struggled to get wins. I think in the early years of when you were playing quarterback roulette with Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall, remember how many close games they were in. They would find a way to lose those games. And I think that now that this program went through what it went through year one in the Big 12, they learned how hard it was to win Big 12 football games. They took that to heart, worked extremely hard in the offseason, and they're getting the benefit of what they're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of this offseason, obviously there's the QB battle. We had a lot of fans were really out on Jake Retzlaff after last season, which I'd like to say I was on the record as, I'd like to see more from this guy, give him a full offseason, give him a chance to learn the system, kind of grow with it. Like he's going to take his lumps early on. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing we're seeing with Utah fans bail on Wilson. Isaac Wilson, which is like, he's a true freshman in there, like give him a chance to go in and learn. So I was kind of in that camp, but I did start getting nervous when they still at the end of camp couldn't really select a quarterback. So I guess my question is, do you think they saw this kind of performance out of Jake, or was it really that close? I heard some places calling it the battle of mid. What was the sense of being around the program you got this summer?
Well, I think it was absolutely a close battle because Gary Bohannon pushed Jake the entire way, and it's exactly what BYU brought him in for. They wanted him to bring the best out of Jake and vice versa. They wanted Jake to bring the best out of Gary, and they both went at it. And there was a point during fall camp that the winds of change were out there, as it were, and it felt like Gary Bohannon may have taken the lead, but Jake bounced back in a big way. The coaching staff always knew that Jake was extremely good in the 2-minute offense. We've all seen that. He did that against UCF this past week. It took him 32 seconds to get him 75 yards down the field for a touchdown. Now, it helps that Chase Roberts stepped out of a tackle and raced to the end zone, but still, the point remains that he is elite when running the 2-minute offense. Their biggest question was, okay, can he be the field general we need him to be out there and really orchestrate an offense? And the one thing he showed, as I understand it, in the final week and change of camp that really gave him the job was he started to really come into his own and started being that guy that was assertive, that was able to make those calls out on the field that were needed to be made in terms of like audibles and making sure coverages and all that stuff were identified. And he really started to own that. And the coaches said, okay, he's starting to finally realize what he's capable of as a quarterback. They saw the potential in him, speaking of Aaron Roderick and the rest of the coaching staff. And the fact that I think Gary pushed him as hard as he did, and I think briefly took the lead in that quarterback job in training camp, I think that pushed Jake to be like, oh, crap, I got to step my game up. And he absolutely did. And the result is what we've seen so far. They're not over otherworldly numbers. There are many other quarterbacks in BYU seasons that will absolutely dwarf what Jake has done. But he's 8-0, and that's the first time since 2009 when Zach led him to 9-0, and obviously before that was 2001. So it's not very often you get a quarterback that can lead you to that type of a record, and it's really cool to see what he's doing, the fact that he's responded so positively.
Yeah, I'll put myself in the camp of a doubter coming into the season. I thought we'd be a 5-7 team primarily because of the quarterback. Yeah, I said, well, we know we got in Gary Bohannon, right? We've got a large sample size. And Retzlaff is just too inexperienced to take us there. And I thought that would be the handicap on this team. And it's just, he's so much fun to watch. It's been incredible. So he has silenced doubters. Do you think A-Rod has done the same thing? I mean, he was a bit maligned coming into this year. I know my buddies are chronic A-Rod complainers, and I like him because I like his play calling. It's an exciting offense. When I compare that to a power run style we had under Detmer or others, I love a fun BYU offense. So I want A-Rod to succeed. Has he done enough now where people are going to say, oh, yeah, A-Rod's our guy?
Based on my social media and YouTube comments, yes. I'll just say that. Trust me, it seemed like for about the first half of the season, still people out there, man, A-Rod still needs to go, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. You can think that all you want, but Kalani ultimately has the say, or Aaron himself have the say if he's going to step down from that position. But the nice part is, as you mentioned, A-Rod has responded very positively. This is an offense that's predicated on a power run element out of the shotgun formation. I know that it seems to be it's a spread offense where they like to sling it down the field. They don't sling it down the field until they feel like they have a numbers advantage, and that means getting the run game going. I mentioned the fact that they've gone over 250 yards rushing the past 2 games. You watch those games, you can rewatch them. All of a sudden, the defense is putting 7, 8 men in the box, and that's when A-Rod starts calling those play actions and really starts attacking down the field. His offense is predicated on establishing the run and then popping it over over the top of the defense for a 30-yard pickup, and he loves doing that. And yes, it is an exciting type of offense when it's working properly. When it doesn't have the adequate facilitators, quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs that can do it the way it needs to be run, yeah, it struggles, and that's when those naysayers like to come out, it feels like.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. So what is A-Rod doing differently? Because that's one complaint has been his lack of ability to adjust in games. But I feel like I've seen some of that this season, like going back to the SMU game in that third quarter, there were some injuries. We were having trouble establishing the run, and they really started leaning on Jake in that QB run game. And that has been an added element throughout the rest of the season. I don't know if that was already in the playbook, going into the season, but they've really leaned on that at moments, and it has really helped, I think, this team open up a little bit. And so, so what is he doing differently that's allowing him to see a little bit more success offensively?
Well, one thing you brought up, Trevor, is the QB run game. He wants to make all 11 guys defendable. He doesn't want to have essentially a defense to be able to say, okay, we have 11 guys to defend 10, because that's a numbers advantage for the defense. When the quarterback can run, it absolutely changes things. And last year with Keaton Slovis, I think there was a miscalculation of them saying, okay, we can make it work with Keaton. Now, Keaton was good in what he was, and that is more of a pocket passing type quarterback. That type of offense is not what Aaron Roderick's best offense is. Remember, Jaron Hall, Zach Wilson, they were primarily guys who like to make plays with their arms, but when needed, had the legs to make plays with their feet. And that's exactly what Jake Retzlaff brings to this offense. The other thing I've appreciated about A-Rod, and I don't know this for certain, I think that Jay Hill sitting up in the box with him has helped him adjust, because Jay Hill is one of the best in-game adjusters I've ever seen in terms of overall coaches, period. And I think that the conversations they have potentially up in that box, I think are helping A-Rod maybe formulate some new game plans, maybe going into halftime and the like, and maybe adjusting on the fly as well, because I've seen a lot more of him saying, okay, that's not working, let's go to this, in games the last 2 or 3 games since Jay Hill ended up in the box up there. And I think that's been a net positive for BYU. Jay has talked about the fact that he's really enjoyed being up in the box. He says it's quiet. I can kind of focus more on what I'm doing as a coach and understand setting things up for down the road. I think the two of them are rubbing off on one another, and I think it's absolutely benefited the BYU football program.
So Jay Hill has been incredible, obviously. I mean, all BYU fans are just, are shocked. How long do we get him for? I mean, he's clearly head coach material. He's going to go coach at P4 at some point somewhere. He's earned it. He's incredible. How long do you think we can get him? Do we get him another season, or is this the off season for him?
I'm going to say we get him for at least another season. Now, here's the thing. That I think that heart attack spell that he went through, I think that's got him really making sure that he's got everything set up to succeed, because he knows his limitations now physically. And trust me, this is a guy who puts his heart and soul into coaching. I working with the zone as long as I have, we had him on weekly during the football season when he was at Weber State, and he put his heart and soul into that program. And Weber State is much better for him having done what he did, and he brought that same type of effort level to BYU, and it caught up with him. And it's very sad to say, because he's 49. He's not a very old guy, and I think it caught a lot of people like, wow, what just happened here? But I think that he is going to be very content to sit back and find the right job as a head coach for him. He's not looking to take the first stagecoach out of town, as it were, in Provo. He applied, I can tell you, knowing what I know, he applied for essentially every open Mountain West coaching position while he was at Weber State, and never got more than a second interview with most of them. Wow. For whatever reason. And we're talking the New Mexicos of the world that could have done absolutely incredibly well had they hired him, and he never got an opportunity. So he came to BYU. He's making a lot more money. I'll say that right up front, coaching as a defensive coordinator for BYU. But I think he saw it as a job audition to be a P4 head coach. And whether that is that he ends up taking the job this offseason, and I look like a fool for saying that I think he's around for at least another year, That's TBD, but I do think he is not going to be the guy who's like, all right, that job, this job. He's not going to be searching for every job. He knows the value of finding the right spot, because if you go out there as a first-time Power 4 head coach and fail, well, guess what you have to do? You have to kind of revert back and go back to the G5 ranks and work up maybe as a coordinator once again. He'd rather have it be a success out of the chute. And I'm telling you, I think BYU might benefit from the fact that he's going to be a little more choosy than many coaches might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever he's making, it's not enough.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So if and when Jay Hill does leave, does BYU? I'm sure they have contingency plans, but who are some of the likely candidates to replace him?
Well, there's two guys that are on the actual coaching staff right now, and Kelly Papinga as well as Justin Enna. Both of them have coordinator experience. And I think both of them, having worked underneath Jay, will have a better understanding of what this defense is. Now, they would probably obviously spin it a little bit and have Kalani's insight, but they would not deviate, I think, from what Jay has installed defensively. But another guy, and I know this is like a wild card out there, but it's been mentioned by multiple other people, Gary Anderson's on staff, guys. And Gary, for everything that Gary is, he's an incredible X's and O's coach. Now, my question is Gary at this point in his life, does he really want to take on a full-time coaching position? He's in a great spot right now. He's a defensive analyst. He gets to watch tape, talk to Jay, talk to Kalani, talk to Justin, talk to all these guys he knows extremely well, share his insight, and then it doesn't have to do with anything with recruiting. It's the best of both worlds for him in many respects. So I would say that he's probably the number 3 man in that race in terms of potential candidates to replace Jay. I would say Kelly's probably number 1, and then Justin Enna's number 2. But Kalani's also got a network of coaches that he's associated with for years around the country. He could go out and find somebody else if he needed to, but I do think he's got viable guys inside the program who are BYU guys. So, that Kelly and Justin played for BYU. They would very much want to put on for their university.
I think a little bit about the transition from Grimes to A-Rod, where you had somebody there in the wings, passing coordinator starts to call the plays and then steps in. Maybe it's the same thing with Kelly or Justin. I was thinking Kelly Papinga as well, special teams coordinator. Special teams have been incredible. I don't know if that's indicative of how he do as a D coordinator, but if he can take this tutelage from Jay Hill and whatever, magic we've got going on right now and continue it, that's obviously what you want.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is he was only the co-defensive coordinator while he was at Virginia alongside Nick Howell. I think Bronco should have made him the outright defensive coordinator. That's just my opinion on the matter. And I do have a thought in my head of what could Kelly bring? Because remember, he played for Bronco, so he understands what Bronco's defense entails. He's worked now under Jay Hill. Could he meld some of the philosophies on both of those and change the defense a little bit in his own eye? Maybe so, but what's working is BYU's defense right now, and I'm glad that Jay Hill came to BYU because he has absolutely changed the trajectory of this program.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Jake, you've mentioned that as part of your day job, you're involved in all the sports in Utah, which means that you are also plugged in a bit with the University of Utah. And as everyone may have heard, we are going to be playing Utah next week. And so
no, really, when's that game?
It's very late, especially for us on the East Coast. So everyone that I've seen complaining on Twitter about the late, I don't feel bad for you. You maybe because you have to keep working afterwards, but nobody else. So they're complaining about getting home at 1. I'm like, man, that's like the third quarter. So anyway. So what is going on in this program? Because it seems like Witt seems like he's done. He seems checked out. I don't know if that's true. That's just like the perception. The team seems like it's broken beyond more than just Cam Rising is injured. There's something else going on. Micah Bernard even alluded to it in comments. He wouldn't say what it was, obviously. What do you suspect that one thing was? And can you shed some light on what's happening there?
Well, I'll just put it this way. Bernard answered that question in maybe the worst way you possibly could have. Yes, there's something wrong. No, I will not talk about it. And no, I will not allude to anything that's happening. What are all the reporters around Utah going to be doing this week? Now, something's broken at Utah. There's something in the locker room I think that's broken. That's complete speculation on my part. I just think that there's a fractured locker room right now. Now, what the impetus of that is, I do not know. Could it be Cam Rising? Could it be a myriad of other things? All of that is on the table. The other thing is is I was one of the people, and I'll just say it outright. I thought this was Kyle Whittingham's last year. I thought he was planning on coming over to the Big 12 with a team that's loaded up, Cam Rising, and essentially riding that off into the sunset. It has been everything but that for this program right now. And it is absolutely gone sideways for the Utes. And talking with my buddies in the media who cover Utah, they're at a loss. And these are guys who are far more in the know with the Utes than I am. And if they're at a loss, well, you better believe everybody else is at a loss right now. And I'm not sure if it's going to be a ready-made fix like 2 weeks from now when BYU and Utah play, that everything's going to be hunky-dory with the Utes. I just don't think that's possible, because it takes a long time to fix stuff when locker rooms get broken like that. And I would like to say it's going to be a more competitive game, but I am concerned that if the Utah that we have seen the last 2 or 3 weeks in particular, since Cam Rising officially was shut down for the year, show up, well, BYU, all they're going to have to do is say, okay, where's Mekhi Bernard? Shut him down, and we should be golden. I hate to like count my chickens before they hatch, because it's a rivalry game and all that. But this Utah team, they are down, and they are down bad right now.
Do they have the potential coming off a bye week to do something similar to Oklahoma State, where they installed some wrinkles in their offense? We couldn't prepare for it because it's a bye week. They got a new old coordinator in there that didn't really show much at Houston, obviously. Is there a chance they take those 2 weeks, install some brand new schemes, and take us by surprise?
If they're smart, they will. Come on. Mike Bajakian, that's his name, the new offensive coordinator. He's been an OC at both Boston College and most recently at Northwestern. He said that the scheme is the scheme. That's the term he used. But he said we'll have some wrinkles, and that was going into the Houston game. And now that you have 2 weeks, essentially a small minor mini camp to sit down and talk with Isaac Wilson. That's the other thing. Is it Isaac Wilson or is it Brandon Rose? Because they benched Isaac Wilson in that game for Brandon Rose. So which quarter
who then threw a game-ending interception essentially, and I mean, not a good look.
Quarterback play is a major weak point for Utah right now. I don't know if they have a ready-made answer at quarterback, so they're going to spend the 2 weeks figuring out who they feel like a quarterback can give them the best opportunity to win. But to your point, Adam, they absolutely should install some new packages, whether that is maybe having some more air raid elements. And Mike Bajakian joked about running the wishbone. Why not try something option wise and see if it sticks? They should try and mix things up a little bit here, because it is really, really stale on offense for Utah right now.
Yeah, it really is wild. And at first it was pretty satisfying, but it's gotten to the point where Utah fans are so down that it's almost not even fun to see them get completely roasted on Twitter anymore. It's just they're
they could have been just a tad more gracious in their entry to the Big 12 to avoid a little bit of the roasting they had now. And not saying, not calling them out for saying they had this coming, but a little bit of grace coming into the Big 12 would have gone a long way right now when they're on a 4-game losing streak.
Oh, they 100% had this coming, and they deserve every ounce of it. In fact, they deserve more than what they're really getting, honestly. But and I think BYU fans have all been very cautious to this point, and I agree. And I think fans, nobody wants to jinx this. You and I, it sounds like we overlapped at BYU. You're there for the quest for perfection. Yeah. And you remember how that blew up in our face, and it was very painful. And so I think everybody's wanting to be very measured. In my, I do segment after the games, Saturday's Night Live each week, and we just kind of talk and getting comments from people that hop on the show. It's a lot of fun getting other insights, but people are all like, "Hey, don't talk about anything other than the next game." It seems like fans are, I was like, well, I mean, the team, you want them to take it one game at a time. We can have a little bit more fun with it, but nobody wants to jinx us. So, which I appreciate. I think we want to, enjoy the wins as they come, not get ahead of ourselves. And I think that's good. We need to prepare ourselves, because if and when BYU does lose at some point, it's not going to be very much fun. And as you mentioned, I think Utah, this is, I think, the last real thing they have to play for this season. So BYU can take, whatever ounce of hope that this team has left to accomplish anything and just completely shut it down. And I know Satake, we saw it against UCF, does not like shutting down opposing teams. He's too gracious for that. He and Witt are obviously close. He doesn't like playing up the rivalry too much, but man, BYU really needs to get out there and shut this thing down early. And then I think you can completely take this team out of it. Do you think they'll go in with that kind of aggression? Will the team be able to come out with that passion and fire?
I sure hope so. Now, the Kalani Satake that likes to downplay the rivalry to the media, that's not the Satake we've seen in the locker room. If you've watched the cut, you have seen the Kalani Satake that I have heard behind the scenes is that fiery competitor that wants nothing more than to win football games. And I think that he'll be pumping his guys up in the locker room while obviously out in the real world, as it were, saying, no, if it wasn't for Utah, I'm not where I'm at BYU. And if it wasn't for BYU, Kyle's not where he's at. He is all about making sure the rivalry is civil as much as possible. But I think he also understands his team's got to bring it. You can't roll into this game, BYU, watching Utah at 4-4 and think, you know what, they're just going to roll over for us. Because if that's what you think as a BYU football program, well, you're in for a world of hurt. Because as you mentioned, Utah, they're playing essentially for pride's sake right now. Their dreams of going to the college football playoff, winning a Big 12 title, that's all gone up in smoke. So yeah, what they can do now, they got to play spoiler. And that is a really, really advantageous spot to be in because there's little to no expectations on the Utes. Whereas, as you guys have mentioned, BYU carries all the expectations and all the, I don't know, being the favorite, all that, the target, they carry that all into that matchup. And that's a tough place to be.
Yeah. So hopefully they do. It sounds like what you're describing of Satake is he's kind of like the mullet of coaches, he's business in the front and party in the back. So behind the scenes,
a little bit. Here's the thing, Kalani. I've heard that during his playing days, he was as fiery as they come, and it's translated over to his coaching. He knows there's a time and a place for that, obviously, when it comes to his players. And we've seen insights into it. Like I said, the cut seems to show the best insights into that when he's talking to his guys. You can hear how fiery he is, talking to them and pumping them up before they go out ahead of games and also at halftime and the like. But yeah, this is a guy that he wants to make sure he puts on a good face and make sure that the rivalry is civil, it's healthy, and it's not just downright toxic, as a former Utah basketball coach like to call it, and an athletic director, but that's beside the point. But he just wants it to be a fun game. He said it's nothing more than that. It's a game, but it's a fun game, and let's go out there and enjoy it. So yeah, I think that, mullet's probably a good way to say it. Business in front, party in the back.
So I want to quickly talk about a couple more things because I still want to get to picks real quick. But so out of all the games left on BYU's schedule, which one scares you the most?
Well, it's Utah. It'll forever be Utah until they get past that game. It's just, you never know. And I like the adage, throw the records out. It absolutely is true. Because when you go into that rivalry game, you're never quite sure what's going to happen. We've seen BYU go in and have Max Hall turn it over 6 times. We have seen games of just incredible odds. Come on, Utah rushing the field 3 times and nearly costing their team that game. Crazy things happen in that rivalry. So I will never bet against that game. But outside of that, it's the road trip to Arizona State. They're a plucky team, and Utah went down there and got beat up by Camp Scattaboo and the rest of the Sun Devils. And I think it could be a tough game for BYU. Obviously, you're going to be nearing the end of the season. We'll see where Arizona State is at that point, but they have surpassed all their expectations this season alongside BYU. And I think they will have every intention of making sure that they leave an imprint on the Big 12 by maybe knocking off a team like BYU that could be going into that game 10-0.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't disagree, but as the season rolls on, my man Trevor will appreciate this because he picked Kansas to win every week for some odd reason. I've looked at their analytics. They've been in every game. They have all the talent in the world, and for whatever reason, they fall apart at the end of every game. And that coming off of, let's say, if we do beat Utah, coming off of a big rivalry win. Is that a letdown game? They come into Provo and they've got all this talent and they've almost won every game on their schedule. Yeah. That is looming large in my mind. It's starting to scare me more and more as I've ribbed Trevor all season for picking him to win.
Well, yeah, I was only wrong until I was finally right. So,
and they gave Kansas State everything they could handle. So yeah, you're right. That it's a weird adage to say they're the best. Are they 2-6 or 2-7, whatever
2-6? Yeah,
they're the best 2-6 team in the country. Just zero doubt in my mind, because you're right. They have been in literally every one of those games. It seems like they just are one play away, seemingly every single game, from picking up a win. It's been an awful season by the Jayhawks standards, considering what they've been expected to do this year. But you're right. That could be a dangerous game because Jeff Grimes, he has institutional knowledge of what BYU likes to do. He helped build this offense that Aaron Roderick runs to this day. So, yeah, that's a dangerous one as well. So there's a trio of games right there that can't be overlooked. And BYU can't just say, hey, right, no, we're going to roll the rest of the way. They've got to absolutely stay engaged and make sure that they are locked in, or else they could slip up.
Yeah, absolutely. But not to jinx us, and just real quick, if BYU potentially, hypothetically makes it to the Big 12 title game, who would scare you the most out of the other potential contenders for BYU to face?
A team that BYU's already played, Kansas State.
Yeah.
They will have revenge on their mind. They have figured things out. Avery Johnson looks night and day different from the game he played against BYU, and you know that he absolutely wants a second chance against the Cougars. That one, yeah, Kansas State absolutely terrifies me. I can't discount what Iowa State's doing because they've been very, very good. And obviously Colorado, they have been a major surprise. Dion had all this bluster and people kept saying, okay, it's a bunch of BS. He ate Colorado's nothing. Well, they're proving they can play. But yeah, I think it's Kansas State that would scare me the most, just simply due to the fact they would have that revenge factor on their mind. They would come in supremely motivated to knock off BYU.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same on that one. And even though BYU shows up for, everywhere, and that's a game I'd be tempted to make it to, but, it's not the same as having the rock behind you in the night game. So,
yeah.
All right. So you can join us real quick as we go through our picks and we look at them. As Adam liked to point out, I tend to, I did not animate the X's there, but I left the animations in on this slide. Sorry about that.
It's
so
okay.
like I told you, Jake, we just go off the cuff here. We're not a big production here, but yeah. So I picked Kansas a lot, but not this last week. But one of us, if you notice, actually picked against BYU and for Utah. I think trying to reverse jinx us.
That might have been the worst week ever to go against the grain on a BYU podcast. Yeah, I'll eat every word of that now.
There you go.
Okay. Well, the best part about that is that means that we are all tied up now. I've clawed my way back from behind, and we are all tied up. So, Jake, feel free to let us know how you'd pick each of these games. Okay. Both of us have Iowa State over Texas Tech.
All right, so in this one, Texas Tech's an absolute fraud. I hate to say it, but the Red Raiders have absolutely been
really.
I think they are. I'm all in on Iowa State right now.
Well, you talked about, and we've talked about it with BYU all season. We talked about strength of schedule. BYU should get credit. I think the same with Kansas. They have a lot of losses, tough strength of schedule. Yeah. But Texas Tech, on the other hand, has not really, especially in hindsight. Yeah. And so, I'm with you. I'm wondering if that is the case. And Iowa State, at this point, I'd like to see them go undefeated and have two undefeated teams from the Big 12. Okay, so again, both of us in lockstep here with Kansas State at Houston. What do you think?
Yeah, it's K-State. Houston, they just have no offense, and you saw that on full display against Utah. These two teams, whoever had that last opportunity to score points was going to win it, but it was an absolute slog. 17-14 is kind of what I expected out of that game. Kansas State should roll against the Cougars.
Okay, and then again, we actually only had one game different this week, and it wasn't this one. We both picked Arizona at UCF.
I'm going to actually go with the Knights. I think they're going to get a little bit of bounce because they obviously fired the defensive coordinator, Ted Roof. We already heard Gus Malzahn is giving up play calling duties. I do wonder how that might affect how UCF plays. And I think they maybe get that kind of that 1 week new coordinator bounce type of a thing. I don't think Arizona is anything more. If you can shut down Noah Fafita and Tataroa McMillan, you're actually in a pretty good spot, as we all found out when BYU played them. But yeah, I'm actually going to pick UCF in that one.
Jake, last week I called Utah to get the 1 week new coordinator bounce. So careful with that call. That's
there you go.
It's a curse.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to have a little fun because Adam and I are split on this one. So what do you make of this matchup?
Give me ASU. Oklahoma State. I don't know what Mike Gundy has done because he's been such a good coach for so long, but similar to Utah, something's broken with Oklahoma State. And I'm not sure it's going to be able to get fixed in short order. So give me Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils.
Yeah, it's true. Just like BYU and Iowa State seem to be twins, it seems to be Utah and OSU for the worse are twins there. I still think they have more high-end talent, and ASU, they seem like, to me, it looks like they've made steps in the right direction. This is, kind of a classic year two, where you overperform in some ways, but still not quite there.
Yeah.
I still think they've got, I don't know. We'll see. I think this game will be telling. And then,
I think they need Levitt back if they're really going to make an impact. I mean, they've got a lot of potential. They recruit at a very high level. Remember, when you look at the recruiting rankings, ASU is way up in the Big 12, and so they've got a lot of talent. And Dillingham is putting it together. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't want to play that team next year. That's they're one of those. It's a year away. They're going to be a force.
Let's get them this year then. All right. So, and lastly, we've got Baylor. I know TCU just came off of that dramatic win over Texas Tech. The frauds from Jake Hatch. You heard it here, folks. So, but we both think Baylor will win that one.
Yeah, I think Baylor's found something. Sawyer Robertson has been the real deal. We all saw that on full display when BYU took them on, and he's continued to play at that level. TCU is all offense, no defense, and I think the Baylor can play enough defense with Dave Aranda as their head coach. They can get the job done, and they can take down the Horned Frogs. And by the way, do you guys know the nickname for this rivalry game, by the way?
I don't.
Well, now they changed it to like the Blue Bonnet, whatever. I don't know.
It used to be the Revivalry, and that's
awesome.
That's one of the best nicknames for a rivalry out there.
That's awesome.
Revivalry. It needs to come back around, but they've got to have the Blue Bonnet, something or other. Get rid of that.
It's a flat flower.
Yeah, don't give that up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I completely agree. I think it's up there with the Holy War and some of the other classic rivalry names. But let me see here. Let me switch us over real quick. Just get our power rankings here real quick pulled up, and now I've lost you guys. So
that's all right. You're still rolling, Trevor.
That's all right. Well, I've lost that screen. So as I flip through here, here you are. But anyway, I can add this on here. Okay, this will do. I'm recording from my car when my kids are in practice. It's one of those nights. So basically, both of our power rankings, I don't want to go through this too long. I mean, a lot of this is said. I think the big thing is that the middle is really kind of shaping out. I think is the big thing. Baylor has kind of solidified itself as in the team in the middle. I think since he's shown they're probably not quite there yet either, although certainly a big threat. Nobody can really make heads or tails of Tech and West Virginia. I don't know. What are you seeing, and how would are there any major differences that you would make in your power rankings, Jake?
The top four are exactly what I think would be: BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, Colorado. Those are absolutely set. I think those are far and away the best four teams. Baylor is on the come up right now, so it's cool to see them doing their thing. I would probably put ASU ahead of Cincinnati. That's on yours, Adam. I think you got Cincinnati ahead of ASU. But you're right. The middle and kind of bottom tier of this league is all a convoluted mess. So essentially throw a dart at the board beyond the top four, and I think you have done okay. Now, Oklahoma State, Utah, UCF, those are absolutely, I think, the bottom three right now just because of how much they've struggled this season. But, yeah, beyond that, the middle, it's just, take your pick, it feels like.
One of the best things is that we can, in good faith, put Utah at the very bottom, and you can't accuse us of just being biased. Like it goes back to, not that I necessarily think they're the worst team, because again, this is kind of looking at record performance and just the state of the program, everything. And Utah, as we've said, looks just broken. That doesn't mean that I'm not worried about the game next week, but for where the program is right now, I think that's exactly where they're at, which is not exactly what they said was going to happen.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's the thing about it is it's not, and I think Utah fans, they acknowledge it. They're down in a bad way right now. They can get grumpy all they want, but their team is 4-4. They're 1-4 in the conference. They're near the bottom, just records wise. And the way the team's playing right now, it has not engendered much confidence in what Utah's trying to put out on the field right now.
Crazy times. Well, we'll continue to see this kind of shape up as we go, but Well, Jake, please one more time put a plug in for your content. I didn't even mention the squad on the and
Oh man,
and
that's
the fun you
awesome.
guys have there.
Those
So
are fun listens.
Yeah, so the Big 12 squad is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You post it on all of the podcast feeds across the network for the Locked On Big 12 shows. But it's Locked On Big 12 podcast, which Drake Toll hosts, is the main originator of the podcast. We have a great time with that, getting all the hosts together and chopping it up, talking trash, and having guys like St. Bill Snyder on the show to talk about the burrito where the sun don't shine. That was a wild time, but yeah,
dude, I don't know how you can eat those. Anyway, I was watching you eat on that one, and I just thought, how. I don't know if I could eat one right now. Too soon.
I'm glad I ate it before I saw the ultimate outcome of that. Let's just put it that way. Since then, I have not had one, actually. I can tell you that much. But yeah, if you want all things of my coverage BYU wise, check out Locked On Cougars wherever you get your podcast. It's also available on YouTube, just like this show. You can follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. It's at Locked On Cougars. And if you want my thoughts on all things sports, not just BYU, you can check out my social media, Jacob C. Hatch on X, aka Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. I really do appreciate it. A lot of great insights, and seriously, go be an everydayer. It's a great show, and it was a lot of fun. And as always, guys, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.